Hello everyone, my name is Ben and welcome back to PASSTHEauxCORD, a channel where... Yeah, and that's about all I have to say about it. But today, we are going to be looking at the latest studio album from Arctic Monkeys called Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. This one's held with pretty high regard among the fan base, so I am excited to get into it. Also, do want to plug real quickly here that if you happen to be new, I do have reactions to the rest of their albums already up, so by the time you're seeing this, all of their studio albums have reactions, so if there's one in particular you're interested in, it is already up here. But with all that being said, Star Treatment is track number 1 of this album, and we're about to get into it right now. Well, this is already very subtle. Kind of an atmospheric mix on here. I've seen that line quoted before, and it is interesting to think about. The way he flows over this track kind of makes him sound like an announcer of sorts. Doesn't exactly flow to the music, you know? Really off the melody. Kind of strange. I don't hate it though. You thought that you could forget, and then you've never seen Blade Runner. I haven't either, honestly. You weren't alive to my knowledge. Hold up. How old is Alex Turner? Man's 34, meaning he was born, that would be at the end of the 80s. So clearly, he is writing from perspective of a character. I was really hoping that this whole time I wasn't thinking Alex Turner was like 20 years younger than he was. Drumming going on in here is very nice. Absolutely forever to get to your Okay, so that's a huge change of pace, and I knew that there would be some changes of pace occurring on this album. I knew that it was a little bit different than the other things that had happened previously, but that was a really interesting listen. So very vintage sound on here, and it seems like he's almost writing like half of the time from the perspective of a person that would be kind of in the time period that this would be sung in, I guess, from the perspective of someone who did things in the 70s, meaning you would have been born in the 50s probably. Definitely a bit of a throwback type thing going on, but it's not the throwback kind of thing that you would sort of expect to see and that has been used by a lot of people. You know, it's not that sort of thing where they're taking from older rock or pop music. This just sounds very atmospheric to that time period. It's reminding me more of like sounds of a movie in that time period than it is of the music of that era, if that makes any sense, because obviously I wasn't alive before the 2000s to tell you exactly what anything sounded like. It sort of reminds me of some like early vaporwave stuff where you'd have albums that sound like they're supposed to be coming from a grocery store or something to that degree, but it actually kind of sounds like it is in a hotel lobby to a degree. You've kind of got this very smooth, somewhat retro music, kind of having an elevator music quality to it almost, and I don't mean that in an offensive way. It's just very calming, very neutral music that could be playing in the lobby of somewhere. And like I said, Alex on this track, the way that he's mixed and the way that he's kind of off the beat, off the melody a little bit, makes him sound like someone announcing something over like an overhead speaker as well. I've heard also that this is somewhat of a concept album, so I'm wondering if we're going to be going through events of things happening in this imaginary hotel scenario that's going on. I was thinking that this was based on an actual hotel by that name, but I didn't really find anything to that degree when I searched it up beforehand. Also, of course, he is talking from his own perspective every once in a while on here too. I mean, I Just Wanted to Be One of the Strokes doesn't exactly apply to the 70s and beyond, because they started up, I want to say, in the 2000s. It's really kind of hard to tell when he's breaking character and when he's not on here, so it's a little bit confusing for that way of looking at things, I guess. But One Point Perspective is the name of the next song. This is very upbeat sounding. Alright. Well, that's interesting. That's a whole string of words right there. So many different things going on. The staccato piano that's kind of going on really makes everything have this upbeat vibe. I'm very glad he sounds like he's kind of on the beat. It was kind of irking me in the last song. That's really nice. Suddenly a guitar solo. Okay. Smart that that's the last lyric in there. That's clever, I do like that. Just kinda ends. And then I had it on shuffle apparently. Okay, so this kind of appears to be taking up a similar aesthetic, which does almost make me feel like this is some sort of, at least sonically, taken up as a concept type record. So we once again kind of have this sound where it does almost feel like a hotel lobby or something to that degree. Now what this was really giving me an image of is a band like just playing in the center of a really luxury, like really fancy looking hotel, okay? The way that he ends the first and last verse on here with "Bear with me, I lost my train of thought" really gives it this stream of consciousness type aesthetic, I guess, to the lyrics, where he's just kind of rambling on about different things, and it's kind of likable, but it's also kind of making me wonder what the point is, I suppose. It's a little bit ridiculous, a little bit absurd every once in a while, but it's almost more likable for that reason. I do find verse 3 very intriguing here, because he's mentioning something that, as far as I know, doesn't actually exist. At least that's what I'm getting from the implication of his lyrical content on here. And what this is apparently about is people asking him if he's seen such and such movie or documentary or something like that, and asking him what he thought of it. And since he's only one guy, he hasn't necessarily watched everything. And I feel that on such a level of personal experience that, you know, you end up only being one person with only so many hours in a day that you can devote to that sort of thing, and you just get kind of lost in it. So I do connect with that. That's interesting. He does almost feel like he's staying in character of kind of a rich person from like the 80s or something. Maybe a rich singer, a very smooth talking person from back then, probably in a band. There's a certain kind of trope of character that I feel like I'm picking up on that I don't exactly know how to describe. American Sports is the name of the next song. Well, that sounds interesting. So when you gaze at planet Earth, very nice strings on here. It's talking about space and it sounds much more spacey. And reality mask is stuck on Parliament Pro. It's a very interesting set of imagery there. The piano work on this album is especially good. Wow. The way that it sounds very echoey here. You know, so the thing about this so far is it really has me interested and I want to know where it's going and what exactly is going to happen next. But I just don't know that out of those last 3 songs, I would necessarily come back to any one of them. And I feel like maybe this album will be kind of a grower in that way and not something that's going to immediately hit me as particularly, you know, musically interesting. Because that's kind of... it's such a aesthetic that's very taken seriously. It's very caked in its nostalgic aesthetic that is very vintage and kind of retro in a way. And it really hasn't broken character with that, which does kind of make the whole concept seem like it's taken a lot more seriously. And that is really cool, don't get me wrong. It's just that I don't know how much it makes certain things stand out. It is very inoffensive, I guess. It's just kind of there. And I feel like that might be the point. It's just that I'm not sure how much I like it. On this, I feel like it's kind of a pairing of the new and the old, saying a montage of the latest ancient ruins kind of brings about that sort of imagery as well. And this almost seems like a continuation on the last song also, because that was very stream of consciousness, and now this one kind of seems like that stream of consciousness, that just like thought process that was going on while our narrator is doing whatever they're doing, kind of got cut off into some darker thoughts and some much more confusing questions about the world, like what this song opens on. Tranquility Base Hotel and Cosino is the next song, of course the title track as well. Interesting, strings opening up the track. Do like them. You know, you added some bass in and now I'm just suddenly digging it a lot more. Yeah, this one sounds really cool. I told you, he sounds like an announcer. Apparently he's answering the phone in this particular place. Tranquility Base in reality is the site of the first lunar landing, but when we're actually talking a sort of hotel casino complex on the moon or not is debatable. I like the idea that the record could be named after a place. It isn't something that I've done before, but I do consider many of my favorite records almost being like places that you can visit. That is really cool. I like what I am reading. I had no idea that the moon landing site was Tranquility Base, but that does make sense because I felt like someone had mentioned it being an actual location to some degree, and so now it's all adding up that this is about a hotel and casino on the moon, which does make me figure out why exactly there's so much old and new going on at the same time. Very neat. I am enjoying that a lot. Get me in the mood side. That's a whole lyric right there. Hotel and casino, Mark speaking. There's so much reference to the moon that's now shining through a lot. Amazing bass line to this track. Oh, wait, hold on. Next song. Okay, definitely my favorite on the album so far by a significant margin. And I say that because so much of the flaws, I guess, in the concept, in what exactly was going on with this album are completely cleared up to me, even though I'm kind of getting the impression that it wasn't fully fleshed out and it was just kind of a rough idea, maybe just like something not super detailed, but a game plan for this album, maybe you could kind of say. But either way, Alex is giving himself a completely different name on here. There's Mark, and Mark is answering the fictional phone as a fictional character in a fictional place. And now you kind of have me immersed in what is exactly going on in this hotel on the moon. And that also brings about a great deal of the calmness making more sense about this hotel. You know, you probably wouldn't have that many people in that sort of scenario, and of course it's just in the void of space, of absolute silence. The moon doesn't have an atmosphere. Everything would be dead quiet outside of the actual sounds that are going on. And now the ambiance of it, of just sounds that would maybe be playing over like an overhead speaker, it's really neat. And I am liking where this is going. Okay. Also sonically, that one just sounded really cool. Had a good bass line. I think that his vocals were definitely the most smooth on this track. Golden Trunks is the name of the next song. This sounds panning everywhere already. The descriptions are so vivid on this record. The delivery is really growing on me. Hold on, I have to pause because I just thought of something. What if 70s, the thing that was kind of confusing me on the very first song, is referring to 2070s? Because it would be reasonable to assume that he's talking about the 70s like it's in the past, so we'd be talking 2090 or so. It doesn't seem unreasonable that we would have civilization on the moon. I mean, technology grows at an ever-expanding rate, and now that is clicked for me, because not only would that make sense technologically speaking, but it would also make the other line up about wanting to be one of the Strokes. Now, obviously, that relates to Alex himself, obviously, too, but they would not have existed in the, in the 70s. So now, putting it all together, like, the Strokes were a thing that already happened, and were, like, already something that our narrator here, Mark, I assume, is trying to revitalize or something, because it did definitely sound like our character here is still someone who plays in a band and is popular and so on and so forth. I was definitely getting that impression, but apparently he also works at this luxury hotel on the moon. Oh, I'm so glad I pieced that together. That's really neat. Okay, back to the song. Synth melody kind of has a dark edge to it, but I like it a lot. I'm sure you've heard about it, ties about you too. Nice. Okay, so obviously that last track is a love song to some degree, talking about two people who fantasize about each other, and in that way, it's also really cool how it ties in, because love is a thing as a species that's not going to go away, but a lot of the thoughts and narratives that come across on this album seem like they're under kind of a futuristic lens, where other very different things from how things are right now are going on physically, but of course the thoughts that people have, the unanswerable questions, the emotions, are still always going to be a thing, and this is kind of diving into a futuristic lens, but still talking about a lot of the stuff that they always talked about. And the fact that they didn't go totally sci-fi with this, by any means, is neat, because it still has weight in the common day, if that makes any sense. Nothing against sci-fi, but you have to think about the fact that not much of that kind of thing is relatable, which makes this sort of angle of this moon hotel where people are still doing regular people things. Really cool. And I do appreciate the sound of that song. Like I said before, the vocal delivery is growing on me, especially now that I realize that Alex is somewhat immersed in a character of sorts, and I am liking the smoothness of it and the way that it sounds kind of vintage, old-timey rock and roll band, you know? And the synth work on that track, once again, kind of classic sounding, but also kind of futuristic sounding. 4 out of 5 is the name of the next song. Subtle string melody in there. A lot of talk about things in the digital age that relate to today, but would relate to The lyrical content on here is really neat.
The things you try to forget, doesn't time fly? I'm in no only time that we stop laughing is to breathe or steal.
Chorus has a very catchy pace to it, very likable.
It's all getting gentrified. Take it easy for a little while.
Love this. That's an incredibly neat way to kind of cut that off. And I like the way it's ending on that bass line too. Alright, another one of the most interesting tracks on here, no doubt about it. Definitely a lot of lyricism on here talking about the information age, as it's commonly referred to, and how a lot of people will go to what reviews are about a place to know where they should go, what they should do, what they should listen to. And it's once again kind of matching up the old with the new, the classical things with the futuristic things. And while a lot of this is very grounded in the present, you know, we have review sites, we have free trials, as is mentioned in the first line. A lot of it is still referring to this hotel on the moon. And another very interesting aspect about that is the fact that this sounds like something that could be played in a commercial. It's somewhat catchy for that reason, and it's pretty much a advertisement saying, hey, we have good ratings, come stay with us. And the fact that it did almost seem like a song that could be from an advertisement or something to that degree made it all the more likable, because of course that would be the goal of a song like that, is something that gets stuck in your head a little bit, keeps you interested, keeps you wanting to go to that place that is being advertised. And that's smart that it actually correlates in that way, but it also makes for a very likable song. The world's first ever monster truck front flip is the name of the next song. That's a long ass title, but oh, is it because there's not gravity on the moon? Could that be why? Smart. I like how the sound of this track is just kind of slinking along. Kelly tried a lot of different vocal inflections on this project. Okay, interesting track, very similar to the last one in a lot of ways, that it did feel like it was somewhat a commentary on the digital age and things that go on because of the technology that we've put ourselves around. And this one focused a lot more on breaches of privacy, data storage, things like that, and the role that that plays in a modern person's life, as opposed to free trials, ratings and reviews, things to that degree. And it was very different in that way, but also very similar that it's kind of a commentary piece on the world we live in, and almost a commentary as well on human interaction, or maybe lack thereof, when we have so much technology overwhelming everything. Or at least that's how I'm interpreting this one, but it almost feels like it has somewhat of a paranoid sound to it that matches the lyrics to a degree. Science Fiction is the name of the next song.
iconography, giving you the cream.
Good guitar work on here. Very simple, but still like it.
Stay with you, my love, the way some science fiction does. Silver screen, strange society, your colony, quantitative easy. I wanna make a simple point about these shindos.
The darker sound that these last couple tracks have taken is really interesting.
That the whole thing may well just end up too clever for its own good.
That is clever.
Science fiction does.
Nice. I really like this line. I feel like this might kind of sum up my feelings for the more negative moments I've had with Suckin' and See especially. Also appreciated the Wu-Tang reference. That's pretty dope. Don't have a lot to say about this track in particular, and it's not really one of the most standout ones because it does do a lot of the same things the previous songs have done. Not that I have a problem with this, but, you know, when you cut it all the way back down to the fact that this song is even called science fiction, it's not very in-depth, and it does kind of just scratch the surface at the concept that we've been getting to this whole time. But I do like the way that he ties it into maybe his own lyricism on that particular line that stood out to me as pretty good. Some other clever stuff in there as well. A decent track. She Looks Like Fun is the name of the next one. Okay, that's strange.
Pouring something tropical. I've got
I see what this is about already. At least I think so. Definitely kind of picking up some of the same things.
with you through cloudy skies.
Making reference to the internet, of course.
To the length of
Okay. Possibly the strangest sound yet on this particular song. Or at least you're self-aware. Okay, so as much as I would have liked to have kind of heard a story go on in this album per se, maybe something focused around our main character, our Mark guy on here, I think that would have been cool, but at the same time, I'm glad this kind of started to pick up and have a little bit more of a point behind it, rather than, hey, Moon Hotel, okay, album. You know, there's a lot of clever commentary going on here. Obviously, this had a lot to do with internet, online life, and privacy, surveillance, things like that. A lot of it kind of tying all together in the last few songs about living in the digital age. And of course, the fact that you picked kind of a sci-fi topic allows that sort of thing to be integrated a lot more seamlessly and makes it feel a lot less out of place to be talking about such things on an Arctic Monkeys record, because overall this one's just out of place in general. But once again, very weird sound to this track. This is a real oddball in the track listing. In particular, the chorus on here, rather odd. You know, that did kind of pique my interest about it as well. So I suppose at least you're keeping me interested, and I don't necessarily ever have a problem with anything being weird. Just thought it was notable. Batphone is the name of the next track. Alright, so here's what I think this one's gonna be about. In the old 60s Batman live action TV show things, he would have a bat gadget for everything. I'm not coming up with examples off the top of my head, but he would just have gadgets for everything with the suffix bat put in front of it so that it's now Batman's thing. And the fact that we all have smartphones seems like a ridiculous gadget that would be kind of brought up back then, and it does tie into it in that way. I think that's going to be kind of our concept on this track. Very digital sounding on one side, but kind of raw on the other. Interesting.
Too much
This is very clever.
It's called integrity. Handheld device. I will flash back now and again.
All so clever.
The glow of your low beams. Numerous a selection. Opening credit.
Cool production going on.
Trilogy wallpaper walls. Fake blinds in the sitting room. Vehicles of home. Making a selection. Open.
And there's a strong bass line, strong amount of ambience going on for this portion of the song, and really the song in general. The way that track kind of fades out really makes me wonder what the end of this is going to entail on the next track, because that very much so sounded like it could have been the end, although not very climactic, I suppose. Definitely talking about smartphones a lot on this track, obviously talking about getting sucked into a hole through a handheld device. More smart social commentary about the technological age and the way that the technology we have today is impacting society. And I think that this is such a better use of Alex's lyrical abilities, because when he's just writing sappy love songs, it really comes across very overdramatic. That's what I was getting all the way through the last album that I looked at. And on Suckin' and See, it seemed like he would just take so many lines to say the same thing. But on this one, he's not necessarily saying anything literal at all. Most of it is very metaphorical and nuanced, and takes some time to exactly wrap your head around exactly what is going on. And I said exactly twice in that sentence for whatever reason. Either way, I said it before that I like that this is kind of taking up a concept about, you know, the world we're living in, rather than just talking about this location. And I think the other option would have definitely been to show some sort of character development or story or something going on along those lines about our narrator and maybe some other people in this hotel. But instead, we're definitely just rolling through some thoughts and ideas while still sort of remaining in the same setting, because all of this is taking up a similar aesthetic, and it doesn't feel like it's necessarily broken character at any point, even if this second portion of the album almost feels darker in a way. The Ultracheese is the name of the next song. Of course, the cheese would be referring to the moon, because everybody used to think the moon was made out of cheese or something like that. Or maybe that's just one of those old fairy tales. I don't know. It's something along those lines. Maybe they didn't actually think it was made out of cheese.
Friends on the wall.
Kind of feels like he's doing an Elvis impression already.
Get freaked out from a knock at the door. When I haven't been,
I feel you. Saying that is very smart.
we'll be there at the
I appreciate everything that line in particular is detailing.
in a bed for a walk. And dressed like a
That's kind of smart because they are fictional characters. Ah, it's really interesting.
we're just about to be kind to someone.
A lot of emotion in this part in particular.
I'm probably not. I shouldn't have done, but
Well, that was a really nice way to end it off, I gotta say. Okay, so in this track, it kind of wraps back around to the first one, almost, in that he's sort of writing from a character, but also sort of writing as himself as well. And when he's almost writing me on the grave of this character, looking back at life and looking back at all of the distractions and things that came his way that way, and looking back at people who he never really reconnected with, and maybe a lot of the digital distractions were kind of getting in the way of that ever happening. Extremely interesting how we have this duality of the narrator going on here, and Alex and his thoughts and everything that is going on alongside that, I guess. I do think sonically that was one of the most interesting ones on there. Gotta give it that for sure. Beautiful track with how deconstructed and off rhythm the one prior to it sounded. It's very nice to have a harmonious send off. And this album in general was so ambitious and really took a different tone even than I was necessarily expecting from it. It is one of their most mature releases for sure, and I would definitely argue that it's lyrically one of the best. Now, the lyrics on some of the albums that I've listened to has been one of my gripes, and it has been one of the strong points as well. On that first album, I really like the real kind of tone to it, and there's been highlights, but there's also been times where I've had complaints that it's too overly descriptive and doesn't get to the point. And I've already told you what I think the major improvement was on this album, and I think that this one just came across in such a ambitious way that I wasn't expecting. They really did something different. They kind of just pulled away everything that they had previously done to come up with a completely different aesthetic, a completely different idea than they had ever attempted before, and I think they managed to create something truly unique. I don't rate films on a regular basis. This is a music reaction channel, so that's why I'm not going to give this an out of 10 rating. That and the fact that I think on revisits, this is going to be a album that grows on me a lot, and I think after one listen, I am nowhere near qualified to give this a number. So overall, I just want to say that I thought it was really neat. There's just so many great ideas going on here. And the fact that it managed to keep me interested despite how remarkably subtle most of it is, and how almost all of it actually borders on elevator music sounding, and there's very few moments on here where there's so much different going on from the song before it. All of it does kind of blend in with this aesthetic. And the fact that they managed to keep me interested in what exactly was going on with the lyrics, what exactly would happen with the sound of this album. It took its aesthetic very seriously, and that was something that I really took to enjoying out of this. So, formulating my thoughts on something this, and I'll definitely be revisiting it, and I'm very much so interested in how this will sound in a different context, or when I'm just relaxing alone listening to it. I think that this is an extremely interesting album, and one that definitely deserves a listen. So, I guess that's it for Arctic Monkeys, main studio albums that is. I do want to check out a few other things that are off the beaten trail, I suppose, but it has definitely been fun to do all of these with you guys, and thank you very much for all of your kind words and support on these videos. I have greatly appreciated it all the way through this particular discography, and this is an important one where I am taking requests constantly, okay? I have a huge list of things that I've written down for people and that I do want to get around to, like, someday at this point, because it would take me weeks and weeks and weeks to actually get through that entire list. But if there are suggestions that you have that the majority of my audience, being the people who watch these Arctic Monkeys videos, want to see from me, drop it in the comments. And if you see ones that you want to see already down there, make sure to give those some thumbs up, because I want to know what exactly to prioritize. There's some stuff that only a couple people wanted that I do want to cover regardless. So if I've said that I'm going to cover something, stay tuned for it, and I am trying my absolute best to get around to it, but I do want to know, other than those very specific things that I have planned, what in general you guys want to see me cover next. But with all that being said, let me know what you thought of this album down in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Drop a like on the video if you did like what you saw today, and subscribe to the channel for more music related content coming your way. Hit the bell for notifications on that same thing as well. I have a Twitter, it's a link below if you want to follow me on there. And that is just about going to wrap it up for this one, and I will see you in the next video.